Hey there, welcome to the Impact Driven Leader podcast. As your host, Tyler Dickerhoof. So glad you're joining in wherever you're listening or if you're watching on YouTube. Glad you're here. Excited today to share with you the guest, Hanieh Sigari. She is an entrepreneur. She is the leader of a skincare network marketing company. In my experience in network marketing, did not connect us. Instead, her publicist actually reached out and said, hey, she'd love to talk about leadership. I'm like, yes, that sounds exciting. So we break down kind of some of the experiences that I've had in network marketing that she has shared, why it's such a great incubator in leadership. We get into a lot of discussions, and really what I think you're going to find fascinating, was mesmerized by the story of where her leadership ethos evolved. She shares a story about her mom that I think is going to be pretty impactful. It also, to me, it underlines and emphasizes how important mentors are. We talk more about that. We talk about, some of the leadership journey she's on, some of her inspiring authors. Can't wait for you to listen to this episode. I'm so grateful for the time that Hanieh spent with me, and I hope you get true value out of what she has to offer. All right, welcome into the Impact Driven Leader podcast. So excited to have today's guest. Hanieh, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Tyler?
I'm good. I'm excited
Good.
to have this conversation. So one of the fun things about this podcast, I'll share this with you. I did share it earlier, is how I come up with guests. Sometimes they're guests that are pitched to me, which is exciting. And that's how I learned about you, because it brings a new friendship, a new connection, a new relationship. I found out that one of your executives was actually a teacher of mine in high school, which is fun, but as well that we've been involved in the same industry, which I'm excited about because it kind of gives me a little bit of behind the scenes to be able to ask. And, I'll share this. You started a network marketing company. My wife and I are part of a network marketing company. I shared this with you earlier. I believe this wholeheartedly. There is no better place in the world. There's no better business to teach leadership skills than in network marketing. Because if you can motivate and lead people there, you can lead them in any organization. And I'm a believer in that. And I kind of shared that with you, and your eyes, got big, and you lit up, and you're like, yes, I experienced that. So I'm excited to talk to you about leadership, about your experience, how you got to where you're at. So I want to kind of first let you start there and just kind of share with the audience, what you do, what your company does, and kind of how we got there. And then we'll have a conversation along the way.
Sure. So, like I mentioned to you prior to the podcast, I had a home healthcare company, and it grew. It started out of passion. That's where
You
it
started it pretty
started.
young, right?
Yeah, I was 25 when I started, but just to give you a little recap about my background. So I'm obsessed with aging. When I first came to America, my parents moved me into a 50 plus community without knowing it. I guess it was illegal, but you can't have children in 50 plus community. But anyways, these seniors really took me in, taught me English, taught me all their skills. Miss Madeline taught me about art, and so, I had this like community of elders that really took me in and raised me. And maybe those were the first leaders in my life. And by the time, however, I got into fifth, sixth grade, my friends started passing away little by little. And that was devastating for, a 12-year-old, 11-year-old to take in. So I was like, when I grow up, I'm going to make it my mission to figure out and find the fountain of youth so that my friends will never have to die. And so I started working at a nursing home at age 15, or whatever the legal age was at the time. And I worked there all through undergrad and college and high school, and I loved it. It was like this community of seniors that I would bring together when the admins would go home. I would bring the party. I would bring them to the corridor. And I was like, that's what's missing in the geriatric field. So anyways, I knew I wanted to be in the field of aging somehow or another. So undergrad, I studied bio, psych, mind body connection. And then graduate school, I did biochemistry, and I started a graduate gerontology program. So anyway, that was the academic background. And I quickly realized, you know what, to really have impact in the field of aging, I got to get out there. I got to put myself out there, and I'm going to start this really cool nursing home and whatever. But bam, you don't have capital. So maybe I can't start with a nursing home. What can I start with? Oh, home health care. So I was so passionate about, having an impact in people's lives, and, like especially with Alzheimer's, finding various ways to deal with patients who have Alzheimer's and educating the families. And so like any business that you're passionate about, it grows. First year without knowing anything, I hit 1.2 million in revenue. Next year, double that. The following year, double that. And it was just growing. And before you know it, I had this massive organization, 500 plus staff members. And it took me away from that thing that I was really passionate about, which was the patient, providing patient-centric care. Now I'm, it's like a staffing agency in a sense, right?
Yeah.
I'm just hiring, and these women are, healthcare, we talk about it right now, especially during COVID. It's a place where people get burned out, especially nurses, CNAs, LVNs. And so I was like, oh my God, I can't pay these people the wages that they deserve because of insurance reimbursements or whatever the reason, Medicare, Medicaid reimbursements. But the American dream is work hard and you get rewarded for your hard work. But here, these women are working really hard. Most of them are single parents and they're not getting what they deserve. So I was like, I need to take it back and I need to figure out how I can drive that impact and be able to start an organization that's based on meritocracy. The harder you work, you earn what you get. So I sold that business, and I was also involved in logistics.
Sure. Can I put a timeout right there? Because I'd love
Sure.
to ask, just one, you immigrated to the U.S. and you were very young, and kind of this idea of like this, American culture. And how much did that inform you in this desire I want to serve people?
Well, it's a very good question. I would say, so my mother was a social worker. In 1979, Iran had a revolution, and the college students started this revolution. So my mother goes to her father's funeral in the South, comes back and sees that her house is totally raided. She calls the police, and the police come and arrest her and throw her in jail. Come to find out, her 4 roommates are already executed, and she's next on the execution list. So my mother served 6 months in prison. She's in jail, and they're trying to figure out enough evidence against her to also execute her. And during that time, one of her classmates sees her name on a list and says, oh my God, I know her. And I will say, prostitution was legal in Iran during the Shah regime. So my mom, as a social worker, while she was doing her rotations, she would have to do the health checks for these prostitutes. So anyways, this classmate sees my mom's name and says, hey, I think I can get you out of jail. Like I could help you. Those prostitutes that you were helping before? You were doing their health checks. Well, they're now out in the street, and we're just gathering them up and throwing them into a women's shelter, but there's no one to run the women's shelter. So would you be willing to run this women's shelter since you have a rapport with them? And I was like, oh my God, holy moly. Yes, of course. Get me out of here. So she gets out, and at the same time, Iran started a war with Iraq that lasted 8 years. So now we have widows of servicemen also ending up in these same shelters, right? And they're clashing, these two, the conservative group versus the other side. They're clashing. So my mom's like, I have to teach them, occupy their time. Somehow she teaches them her hobby and her skill of sewing. And she was very young, 23, 24. So she, and they, as they become more skilled, she goes back to the State Department and says, hey, can we get sewing machines, please? And they're like, yeah, well, we need uniforms and sheets for the military. So would your woman be willing to sew this for us? And I could get you your 200 sewing machines. And she's like, done, we'll do it. So without knowing anything about assembly lines or business or anything, here's this young woman, and she sets up an assembly line, puts the more skilled woman on, on the harder tasks, and so on and so forth. And little by little, they're growing, their skills are growing, they're getting faster. She goes back to the department and says, I need to pay these women. They're working for free, and we're not going to have that. So they're like, all right, not a problem. They gave them wages, and slowly these women moved out of the shelter. Some of them got other jobs. And so this was a theme in my life. My mother was a hero
Sure.
and back in Iran. And I wanted to follow her footsteps somehow. I wanted to continue this legacy of serving and providing a chance, teaching people the skill sets necessary for them to be able to provide for themselves. So I think entrepreneurship, like, just naturally fit, in that pursuit.
Well,
Yeah. So
To me,
that's
that's a tremendous model of leadership. I mean, you think about
truly.
it, and I'd love to, just kind of, again, we have a story to get back to. We'll get there, trust me. But I'd love to know, like, where you're at now or along the way, kind of some of the things that, what your mom experienced, kind of like, oh, okay, that's how I lead people. That's what
Hmm.
I do for people. Like,
Hmm.
what are some
Hmm.
things that you can just think of?
Empathy is absolutely necessary, right? And what exactly is empathy? The way I
Okay, now we're
describe
getting
it,
good.
yeah.
Yes, I want to
The
hear
way
it.
I
Let's go.
describe it is when my son cuts his finger, I wince, right? And I feel
Okay.
his pain. I truly, like, I am connected to him and I feel everything. So I think that is empathy, when you can really truly connect with people so that
Okay.
you don't have to experience all their emotions, right? Their pain and whatever, but truly connecting and listening. And I think that was, yeah, that's just been
Okay.
a part of leadership in my experience.
So
Listening and connecting with people. Hmm.
can I share my definition?
Sure. I'd love
Because
to hear
it's putting your arm around people and walking with them.
it. Mm.
And as you share that about your son, it's like, yeah, I mean, if you're, as a mom, like, ouch, ooh, okay, now you bandage it up, you're walking with him, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't take
Mm-hmm.
that cut away from him, but you're experiencing that with them. And I think as a leader, the more able you are to do that with people, as you just shared, the more that you can progress together. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like, oh, you're serving me and doing this for me. Like, we're doing it together. It comes back to what you said earlier in your first business that you shared. Hey, how difficult it was through all the contracts and all the billing and everything else to actually pay people and
Mm-hmm.
walk with them. And that's why you
Mm-hmm.
wanted something different.
Oh yeah, completely. Yep. Spot on.
Yeah, I
You're
love it.
right. Thank you.
Okay, so your mom
Thank
gave you
you.
that model
Yeah.
of leading and learning with empathy, practicing empathy. How does that evolve to where you're at now as
Yeah.
a
And
leader?
the other thing she taught me was being resourceful, right? You don't have to know the entire path. As long as you could see the next 500 feet in front of you, you could get to your destination, right? As far as it
Yeah.
may be. So, yeah, we came to the US, and I knew I wanted to follow her path and continue her legacy somehow and serve a community somehow or another. She was a social worker, right? She served so many people. So I came and I graduated and I started this company. It evolved, and I exited. Um, and I wanted to start over. And I thought, what would be the ideal company that I could build? If I could have anything, what would be that thing that would get me out of bed every single morning excited, right? Just like that first year when I started the home health care company, I could drive for miles, hundreds of miles I was driving. I would come home like 2 a.m., get a phone call at 4 a.m., be up. I was excited. I was passionate, and there was conviction there. So I wanted to have that same excitement. Again, I missed that. And I wanted it to last this time for a very long period of time. So network marketing kind of was just, it was something I stumbled upon. I didn't know anything about it, but I quickly learned, wow, this is a platform for impact. You don't just have a one-time transaction with a customer. You have someone who you can grow with and evolve and really, if you do it right, teach them so that they could transfer their skills to their household and their community. Like, how
Yeah.
cool is that? Where else can you
Yeah.
do something like that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a really cool journey, and I'm learning from these women. So you talk about leadership. I'm learning leadership from them just as much as they are learning from us as a company.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are you learning? Because I got to ask that. I'd love to know what you're learning.
One thing I'm learning is, so everybody has their own style of how they need to be led,
Mm,
right? Um, I'm learning. that some people really truly need hand holding and step-by-step directions, whereas somebody else, you just tell them what the goal is and they'll go.
Yeah.
And, I think sometimes we have the expectation as leaders of like the other person just gets it and understands. But no, like maybe they need a little bit of coaching and hand holding. So they're teaching me that a lot. Some of them need more care than others. And the other thing I'm learning is some people have the skill set, but they don't have the mindset, and how important
Mm.
mindset is um, in order to get to where you need to go. So I was so focused on the skill sets, teaching, entrepreneurship, and so
Yeah.
forth. But it's like if you don't marinate the mindset, and if you focus too much on the mindset, getting their mindset right and not giving them the skills. So I'm really learning the balance between mindset, skill set, and having empathy for the person that you're interacting with. So yeah, it's a really cool journey.
I think that I love that you share that, and that's been something I've experienced. And I think, the more interactions you have with people, the faster you can learn these lessons and see, oh, it's just not the people that are coming to my business. You talk about it, your home healthcare business, you had 500 employees, right? And how many of those people had the same mindset and skill set as the people you're working with now? Some of them maybe, some not. But to think in business that everyone's going to be the same way and that's how you're going to have success. And I think that's how leaders end up selling themselves and their ability short, but also discount people with a tremendous amount of talent and ability. Is
Mm-hmm,
thinking, well, I can only work with people that are driven on their own. It's like
mm-hmm,
you're going to miss out on skills
mm-hmm,
that maybe someone else that needs a little bit more direction has, that's going to tremendously benefit your business. That maybe in 5 years, they will have, kind of developed this entire skill set that they're actually a better leader.
mm-hmm,
And I think,
mm-hmm,
as I've learned, is that's a big undertaking, is to
mm-hmm,
accept that instead of just writing people off as like, oh, they don't get it.
mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. Totally spot on. And we can be somewhat impatient, but I do believe also leadership through mentorship is probably the best form of leadership. And if you just get into the mindset of I'm a mentor, right?
Yeah.
Some I attribute where I am to the leaders and the mentors that came into my life. And the best mentors were the ones that never told me what to do. They let me learn from my own mistakes, right? They were there for me to like catch me if I really bang up and, tell me to get up. But they never told me exactly what to do. They kind of like let me learn from my own mistakes. So I think mentorship is it's crucial. Like and people forget that part of
Yeah.
leading. Like, no, you're a
Yeah.
mentor. You're take everything else out of it. You're mentoring
Yeah.
this person. How would you mentor? Right. And then
Yeah.
teaching that to other people, the effective way to be a mentor to others, right? That's cool stuff.
Yeah. A little bit earlier. So as a part of this podcast, have a book club, and with that a round table, and we discussed this, and it came up as like, why are we in such a shortage of leaders? And to me, it's what you just said. So many people are focused on the production, but
Mm-hmm,
not mentoring,
mm-hmm,
and realizing that actually we can accomplish way more through like a mentoring process where, hey, we're doing this together.
mm-hmm,
I'm guiding you. Maybe I'm 4 steps ahead of you, but we're going through this process together, which to me is a model of mentorship. I either have done it, I'm a couple steps ahead of you, and we're going through this process together.
mm-hmm,
It's, to me, it's like you sharing what you shared earlier about what you've learned in leadership, and have to realize, hey, everyone's a little different. Well, if you're
mm-hmm,
mentoring someone in that, they're going to bring up questions that you're like, oh, hadn't quite thought about that. Let me process that. Let me get back to you. It's like, oh, how
mm-hmm,
would I deal with that? You're both growing.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's no blame, right? You can't blame anyone when
No.
when you're a mentor. There's no one to blame, and I think leaders have a
Yeah.
tendency of blaming people, which is awful. Um, it's like no, take complete ownership. Like it's you. You failed as
Yeah.
a leader. Your team,
Yeah.
your staff, the person under you didn't fail. It's you. And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
leaders just don't take that responsibility on, of like complete ownership of, it's me, I'm
Yeah.
failing. Right.
Yeah. And there, I think there's a point in that I'd love to just kind of explore and to say, I don't have to take ownership for all of your actions, but I need to take ownership for my place in them.
Hmm.
And if
Hmm.
I failed to lead you in the way that I need to, I got to own that. But if you went and
Hmm.
made a decision that has nothing to do with me, that's affecting your ability to lead, well, sorry, that sucks.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
that instead of writing it all off to say, well, they can do whatever they want, or they didn't do what I told them, it's like, oh, why didn't they? Like, what
Hmm.
other things are going on? It's,
Hmm.
I want to circle back to the empathy piece when you brought up your son. It's like, if you tell your son, hey, don't play with that sharp knife because you're going to cut your finger, and he cuts his finger, you're going to have a different context on that as opposed to he's just playing and one of his toys cuts his finger, right?
Hmm.
In my
Hmm.
mind. And I think in leadership, that's the same way.
Hmm.
And I'm still going to bandage him, right? If he cuts with a knife or he cuts on a toy, I'm still going to put a Band-Aid on him. I'm still going to make sure that he has antibiotics so he doesn't, like a Neosporin type thing, so it doesn't get infected. But yet I'm also going to sit there and say, oh, what did we learn? Like,
Hmm.
what happened here? If he was playing with, grab the knife as opposed to the toy, I look at that differently. It's like, that had nothing to do with him. I need
Hmm.
to, as a leader, take ownership there and say, I need to go make sure that that doesn't happen again. That's on me.
Hmm.
Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah, no, completely. Completely. But I think also at the same time, when you take complete ownership, it's like, um, you maybe I hired the wrong person, right? Like when
Yeah.
maybe that's what
Yeah.
it is. Maybe this person was not fit for this role. So again, it comes back to you, and you can grow, you can evolve. I think if you take responsibility and not point the finger, um, that's all I'm trying to convey. Not pointing a finger at anyone, and taking responsibility, to a certain extent, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the driver for this understanding of, you mentioned your mom, but what even more from an empathy and emotional intelligence, realizing, oh, this is a much bigger part of building a business than just meeting the numbers.
Yeah. So it's a movement. That's what it is. It's educating people on the skills necessary, right? It's like leading the horse to the water, I guess that
Yeah.
analogy. If you give people the opportunity and the tools, you don't know what they could possibly be capable of. I always say,
Yeah.
there's actually the argument, like, if Mozart didn't have a piano, would he be Mozart? Like, and
Yeah.
somebody would argue, no, Mozart would go find his piano eventually, but some people don't. There's no access to that. So I think allowing people to really experience this American dream of entrepreneurship is so exciting to me. Um, Teaching the skills, and then also combining that with this. I mentioned the home healthcare company. We're getting these patients at end of life. Like, why are we telling people in their 90s how to eat better and live better? And now, like, that starts in your early 20s. So how can we also educate on aging? And that's another one of our missions. We're here to also, get everyone healthy, and teach about the process of aging, both your external and internal. So
Yeah.
it's been a mission of ours to incorporate some of these aspects into our business and fold it in.
So with that, what's the challenge?
As you know, in network marketing companies, they grow, and they grow rather fast. They can take off, and product innovation suffers at the same time, right? It becomes a very heavy ship, and they become stagnant, right? That's why I think the top revenue for one of the biggest MLMs is like 10, what is it, like $10 billion, right?
Hmm.
It's like,
Yeah.
why don't we have a company that's in the 100 billion or 60 billion? Why don't we? It just becomes a really heavy ship. And then if innovation doesn't, there's no innovation within the company. So if we can stay agile and nimble, right? And still keep that startup mentality when we have 100,000 consultants, 200,000 consultants. How cool would that be, right? Like maintaining that startup mentality at all times. Like, okay, this isn't working. Let's quickly, in a scrappy way, fix it, right? It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be perfect. Let's fix it. Or right now, where I'm listening to our customers. Like, what do they want? And we just quickly we're able to add these things. Like I'm adding Telederm and prescription grade products in 45 days. That's like unheard of, right? From start to finish, from developing our like just staying nimble. And I think a lot of companies start losing that. So that's the challenge of how do you continuously evolve and innovate as your ship becomes heavier and your consultant base grows, right? That's I think that's the challenge. Yeah.
I what I think is interesting is I don't think the scope of your business or industry impacts that. And the reason I say that is I mentioned earlier the roundtable have of this, and we had a discussion. And there's a gentleman who has a real estate agency, and he talked about kind of getting off the mark. And I had this thought as he shared it, and I just wrote it down here. It's getting bigger exponentially will come at the expense of getting better incrementally. I mean, and what you just said about if you get so big exponentially, you can't get better incrementally. Like that innovation. And my belief is if you get better, the opportunity to get bigger will be there. And yet if you focus in so many companies, again, it's does not matter what industry. And I think it also can be leaders. They're focused on so much getting bigger. They lose sight of the elements that'll actually help them get bigger, help in a healthy manner, which is get better. It's why, going back to that statement earlier, is why aren't there not enough leaders? Why are we in this shortage of leaders? Is because too many leaders are saying, well, what do we need to do to make sure that bottom line? What are we doing to drive sales? And not doing what you just said. It's like, are we focusing on meeting the customer, the innovation, the things that are helping us get better? Man, that's going to allow us to get bigger, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, think about your growth as just data. The money, the revenue that's coming in is just data, right? If you're, focusing on the product, focusing on your customers will drive that naturally. Like I mentioned in the home healthcare, for example, I didn't know what I was doing. First year, I grew as fast as I did because I was passionate, right? I was just passionate. I didn't even know how much we were making until my accountant told me at the end of the year at that. Not even month to month, I had no idea. So I think focusing, not losing sight of your customers' needs and the future needs of where the industry is kind of progressing to. Like right now, we're doing personalization. I wholeheartedly believe that that's the future. Where Spotify already can predict your next song. So why don't we have the same thing in products? Why don't your products evolve with you? Why aren't they made just for you? Like it's 2022, people, But these big conglomerates, the P&Gs and whatever, they just can't do it. They're so big. By the time they implement these things, it'll take 5 years, 6 years, So it does come at the price of growth, and being large does come at the price of innovating. And, I guess sometimes they get around that by acquiring other companies, and that's possible. However, you have to want it as a leader. Like, don't lose sight of that. Yeah.
So I'd love to, just kind of ask you to think about that from the focusing that from a leadership point of view in your space today. You mentioned the challenges of leading. What's challenging you in your ability to lead your organization and those around you in that context of, oh, we're getting bigger. Well, how am I getting better? What are you doing to get better?
So I read a lot. How am I getting better? I read a lot, and I try to learn from other people's experience, but also bring on people that can do it better than you. Don't be embarrassed of that, right? I'm not as good as, for example, Mark, who's leading the consultants. He has the experience, he has the passion, and he has, the drive to do it. So I put someone else in charge of, that development piece. and let me focus on the stuff that I like to do, which is, looking at what's in 3 years, what's in 5 years. I'm driven by the product. I really love products so much, so let me focus on that and allow, the other components to be taken by people who are qualified to take that. I think that's also part of leadership, like getting your hands out of certain things. I think is so hard and difficult for leaders. I mean, I have heard of CEOs that have 20 direct reports. Like, what are you doing? You don't need all that. Like, like let people handle things for you. And I think a lot of executives have a difficult time getting their hands out of certain things. They get stuck, right? And that prevents the company from growing. Also.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think as a leader, recognizing when it's time to hand it off to somebody else or stepping back.
So with this being a book club podcast too, I'd love to know what books have impacted you. Like, what books are you reading, or what right now are you going down the path of, I want to read more of this. I want to learn more about this area.
I got heavy into the manifestation stuff, like Neville Goddard. And I just went down this rabbit hole, and I allow myself to go down rabbit holes. Like, if I'm passionate about something, I just follow that. Like, let the journey lead me. So Neville Goddard, any of his books, oh my God, I love him, because I feel like a lot of what Wayne Dyer and everybody, the Tony Robbins and all these people that came after, a lot of the concepts started with Neville. So that to me, and Rich Dad Poor Dad, like these very basic things that these books that are top sellers. There's some good content in there, but right now, there's a really good one I'm listening to, actually.
That
I'll
fits in
get
my
it.
book.
Yeah. So, what else is really good? Oh God, there's so many. Stephen Pressfield, any of his books, the War of Art. It's the opposite of what Lao Tzu's book is. The War on Art. I think every entrepreneur should read that. Any of Seth Godin's books. I love him.
Marketing stuff.
Jocko. I mean, I love like all these really inspirational books. They've inspired me. But Neville, I go back to him. Like, whenever I'm down or I'm not performing the way I should, or I feel stuck, I just go back to Neville, and he like gets me out of whatever rut I'm in. So I'm a huge fan.
Awesome. Well, I've so enjoyed the conversation today. I appreciate you spending time with our audience and sharing your experiences. And I want to share this with you. The amount that you lit up when you shared about your mom is one. I understand. I was going to ask the question, but I didn't even need to. Who was the biggest driver of your ethos to serve? That's your mom, and I can tell. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate you sharing that story, because it gives me such great context for you. As we wrap up here, is there any last things that you would like to share with the audience that they can either learn more about you or just kind of, again, this idea of, serving from a place of empathy in order to help people have a better life? So.
Yeah, I think if you haven't already joined a network marketing company, whichever one it is, I think it's a great place to just develop yourself and evolve as a person, and stay curious. I think let your curiosity lead you to where you need to go. I think that's really, really important. Just allow curiosity to develop and evolve. And well, just do it. Just do it. Don't wait. Don't wait until the opportunity is right or whatever it may be. Do it. If you want something bad, go get it. And if you want to be a better leader, you'll figure out a way to become a better leader, through whether it's finding a mentor or reading books or getting a coach, whatever it may be. If you're really trying to be a better leader, you'll find the means to do it. So be humble enough to say, I want this, right? I think that's pretty, what I would share.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Tyler.
Appreciate your time. And until next time.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
One of the things that I want to, kind of as a guest, as she shared with me after we got done, is that she started to think a little bit about her mom, her family, and got a little distracted. And she apologized for that. I know that she brought tremendous value today. And I'm excited for you to listen and take notes. And it's more of an example of what it's like to be a leader. Now, I'm blown away by her desire, what she sees in front of us as someone who was born in the United States that maybe didn't have that shocking difference from what she shared from her mother to herself coming to the United States, but yet she's so grounded in what her desire and purpose is based upon the people that mentored and served her so much as a young girl. I hopefully you get tremendous value out of this episode. Maybe not as much the classic author style episodes that we've had in the past, but a lady who is serving people around her in a way that she finds impactful and just loves to be emotionally connected and empathetic. Her desire to, I want better for people. To me, it's examples like Hanieh that absolutely drive this world because they're better leaders. She is making better leaders in her world. She had a mother who was a tremendous example to her. She desires to be that mentor to others. To me, I think that's pretty special. And I believe as a leader, if we can help reduce the shortage of leaders, it's by being that model. I encourage you to do the same. I'm so grateful for the relationship that we developed, and I hope you got value, took notes from this episode. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.